How's everybody doing? Sweet. So I'm allergic to podiums. So and I kind of don't like stages either. So I'm just going to kind of stand here and I'm going to mill around a little bit. And then I'm going to tell some things and some stories. And you can be entertained. And maybe we'll have time for questions at the end. And normally, when I have a chance to talk to a group of people, I tend to have a good amount of time, which is hours, usually 3, 4, or 5 hours to address a group of people, which I can do my best to attempt to fill in the gaps on a single topic that I can do for that amount of time. So when I'm given a very tiny amount of time to talk about a lot of information, I feel a little pressed for, oh my God, what am I going to forget? What can I squeeze in? What's the most important thing? So I'm going to briefly cover a couple of points about myself, about what I do, and then I'm going to do my best to cram a 4-hour conversation into a very short period of time of what I think is the most important thing that I'm here to tell you today. So, my bio is, as it stands, all right, I guess we'll do a quick poll. How many of you know who I am? You've heard of me, you've listened to interviews. Okay, how many people don't know who the hell I am? Okay, cool, fun. So those of you who don't know who I am, there are literally dozens of hours of interview time that I have done on the internet. I recently did a series of interviews with Gaia where Emery Smith, you know who he is? Okay, got to interview me. If you haven't seen those are really good. But there's also just tons of hours of stuff of me out there talking blah, 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 endless amounts of time about my career and what I've done. Since I don't have time to talk about that, I'm going to recommend if you feel like you don't know who I am, have fun with that. There's tons of crap out there, and you can spend your time listening to me tell stories about being in the MDF or being a pilot, what it was like growing up in a training program, et cetera, et cetera. And I know some people really want to hear those stories, but that's not the most important thing for me to talk about today. So, of the two things that I consider the most important, the first one really is understanding something about the nature of being a human being. Because when we talk to and communicate with extraterrestrials, there can be a lot of conversations. First of all, this notion that they're all amazingly, crazily more technologically advanced than we are, not true. The notion that they're all mightily militarily superior to us, not true. There certainly are those who are much older, much more technologically advanced, much more superior to us, but there's also this scale of those who are still developing, those who have still entered into spacefaring species not that long ago, in the same way that we have not long ago. There are humanoid species and or other oxygen bipedal species which use similar things that we do, so we can trade with them. That makes good sense. But there's very little, when we talk about the advanced technologies, they're awesome. Spaceships are great. Wormholes are great. Free energy technology is great. Cellular regenerating technology is great. But when we talk to the older, more advanced species, they say, look, tech's cool. Understanding that your brain is a quantum entanglement computer that can bend matter and energy, slightly more important. Okay? So one of the things that I do regularly back home where I live in Yelm, Washington, is I do a psionics class where I will teach from the United States Marine Corps Special Section's Psionics Manual, where I discuss the basic principles of how your mind and your brain works, what brainwave patterns you're trying to create, what disciplines and fundamental principles and practices a person can take to engage their psionic abilities. And I have managed to teach the last 3 classes that I've taught. I have got 100% of my students to replicate a telekinetic practice. Okay? I have gotten 100% of my students to move an object without touching it physically. So once you understand that it's about rewiring your brain so that you can do things and believe and understand that you can do them, gives us an ability to have incredible potential over the bending and manipulation of matter and energy in our lives. That's more important in our evolution and our understanding of where we are in the universe than whether we have cool spaceships. Right? But it's not the most important thing that I can talk about today either. So it's one of the most important topics that I tend to focus on. It's why I teach a class. I'm doing a workshop later this evening. We're going to see if we can do about 3 or 4 hours. Anyone who's interested in that can either talk to me later or Leslie Mitchell-Kark, who's signing people up. And I'm happy to spend a few hours trying to convey something to you that makes that make a little more sense and where we can talk about that a little more fully. So now let's get on to what my superiors think is the most important topic that I should be talking about to you today. Earlier this year, while I was giving sort of my standard rounds of talks, my brigadier and I in our regular briefing session says to me, so you might want to think about having a different conversation at your next talk. And I was like, what do I want to talk about? And he said, you might want to go hoax alien invasion. I said, okay, why? And he said, well, some people dusted it off. We're looking at it kind of seriously, and we might be going that direction. So, at the advice of my superiors, I'm going to attempt to give you a little bit of a potential possibility to understand what may occur and why it may or may not be a good thing if we end up in a hoax alien invasion sometime in the next 6 to 24 months. Okay? So, everyone following along so far? Okay. So, show of hands, how many people think hoax alien invasion would suck? All right. A scripted event in which the hostile force is a friend pretending to be the bad guy. Sure, you can call it a false flag if you want. I think it steps a little bit beyond normal false flag operations at this point, but because it wouldn't necessarily just be false either. It's a little gray area. All right, how many people think that a hoax alien invasion would be the awesomest thing in the world? Ooh, nobody. Okay, this is going to be a hard sell. All right, so I'm going to attempt to convince you, not hopefully through a strong arm tactic, but hope to convince you through a few logical points why a hoax alien invasion might be the best frickin' thing we could ever have. Ooh, silence. Okay, this is going to be fun. So, let's talk briefly about the state of the world. The state of the world right now is a shit tornado and a diarrhea hurricane. All right? So no matter what you think of who the sides are, who the good guys or the bad guys are, the truth is there is just shit everywhere. Okay? And that's not going to change anytime soon. Because in order for us to get to a place where such an event could occur, the ripples of stability across the social psychological fabric have to be very loose. If they're very rigid, people will resist a changing event and it will harm their psyches and they will be more likely to freak out. We don't want people to freak out. We want to mitigate freaking out. Most people will not freak out. However, 2 things to consider here. One, okay, another quick poll. How many people want to meet an alien tomorrow? All right. How many of you are like, no, I do not want to meet an alien tomorrow? Okay, that's interesting. So, here's the part of your brain that's telling you that you want to meet an alien, your frontal lobe. Your frontal lobe is going, yeah, meeting an alien. That'd be cool. Someone from another world, might learn something, new experience, sounds like fun. Now, if you have another biological entity that is standing next to you that is not like you, 2 things are going to happen. Your frontal lobe is going to go through that exercise of going, oh, there's an alien. This is what I've been thinking about. I would very much like to talk to this person. That's really cool. Your frontal lobe is going to do that over a few seconds. But way before that happens, your amygdala, in a couple of nanoseconds, is going to make another decision for you. And that decision is whether or not you're going to panic. I guarantee you, more than 90% of you, given that circumstance, without any preconditioning or pre-training for such an event, will panic because your amygdala is going to make that decision before your frontal lobe ever even has an opportunity to think about it. Okay? So when we understand what disclosure actually means, we talk about all these things about what we think it means, but let's talk about some nuts and bolts of what it actually means when it happens. Everyone's going to have to go through a process, mentally and emotionally and psychologically, right? Everyone. Individually, as a group, family members, communities, cities, states, countries, everyone's going to have to go through it together. Statistically, about 85% of everybody within 14 to 90 days will acclimate and come to acceptance. Not too shabby. But it's that 15% of mentally and emotionally unstable people that we're concerned about. 15% of the population is a good chunk. You set those people off by shocking them, surprising them, making them think the world is going to end, that the grand battle between light and dark and good and evil is happening before them, that Armageddon is occurring, unfolding before their eyes. They might freak out a little bit. And they might do something stupid. And they might do something dangerous. They might not just decide to kill themselves. They might decide to kill themselves and their entire family with them, their wives and their children. Or they may decide to get together with a religious organization that they participate with, lock themselves in a church, and burn it to the ground. These are not hypotheticals. These have happened before when people thought the world was coming to an end. So, we want to make sure that that doesn't happen and that no one starts off a trend committing mass suicides or murders. Again, with this tiny fraction of mentally and emotionally unstable people. So the notion is, there's really two ways that we can have a disclosure moment. Right? There's a path A and a path B. Path A is where we create a moment that we call, take me to your leader. Right? Someone lands on the lawn, steps out, says, take me to your leader, and we have this nice, peaceful kumbaya moment with an extraterrestrial friend who plays the part of the first initial contact. Even though we've had that a very long time ago, it would be a pretend event to say, oh, we're just having contact right now. That's one option. With that option, unfortunately, the negative side effect of that is the chaos of people not being sure where to self-direct themselves. And with people not sure where their compass point's going to go, you create chaos. And the potential for that 15% to go absolutely apeshit under that plan A doesn't look so good on paper. Not my plan, not my idea, but people who get to make these decisions have looked at that and said, what's the other option? Okay, option B is hoax invasion, where we have a similar neighbor and or friend show up and say, I'm the bad guy, right? And then we get our asses handed to us at first for a little while, right? Gives us an excuse to bring out all of this covert technology that we've been hiding for so long, right? We can all of a sudden, through a desperate, immediate life or death need, start building spaceships, railguns, plasma rifles, whatever we need, right? And after a little while, we do a little better, but we still lose. And then someone else shows up. Another friend. But this is a friend who's pretending to be our friend, not our enemy, and says, I'm going to help you chase away the bad guy. And then they help chase away the friend who is pretending to be the bad guy, and then invasion's over. But we focused everybody's attention on one thing. I don't know how many of you have traveled the world lately. There are places in the world where you have groups of people next to each other that hate each other so badly that they are not willing to exist while that other group exists. All over. We have more people wanting the demise and extinction of other groups of people than we ever have. And as childishly simple as it sounds, you get everybody focused on one thing, and that's actually a good thing. If we get everybody to stop focusing on killing each other for just a little while, reset some neural pathways, and focus on something that's not us, so that around the fire pit you can have every person from every walk of life, every racial group, every religious background, and they can all agree on one thing. Damn aliens. And that's fine for that period of time. It's not something we're going to continue for the next century. It's not something that we want to sell the idea aliens bad. We don't want to do that. We want people to focus on something so that they're not focusing on what they're focusing on now. Because what they're focusing on now is a series of divisively planned propaganda operations designed to divide and conquer. How many Americans do we have here today? I mean, most of you are Canadian. This is my first time in Canada, by the way. Thanks for having me. Thank you. But thank you. But I just want to ask that question because I honestly don't know how well you understand the American political system right now, or what's happening in the American political system, because most Americans don't understand what's happening in the American political system, okay? But for people who are paying attention, Civil War 2.0 is brewing, hot and heavy, okay? And there are foreign intelligence agencies from other countries who are fueling those people with propaganda information, money, intelligence, and in some cases, money for weaponry. Does this sound familiar? Have we ever done this as Americans? I'm sorry, me, us. I mean, have we ever gone into other countries and divided up the sides and armed them both and got them fighting against each other and caused destabilization? Okay, we've done that. So guess what? It's happening here. Sorry, there. All right? I mean, but sorry, you're our next door neighbor, and you're as enwrapped in this with us as anybody else could possibly be. So you're in it whether you want to be or not. But this is what's happening here. We're seeing this incredible amount of propaganda, confusing people, dividing people. People on the right think the left is absolutely want to start a civil war, and the people on the left are concerned the right absolutely wants to start a civil war, and they both better start it first before the other one does. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, people are not listening to this? But this is not just happening here, there. It's happening all over. Because there is a shifting in balance of power. And anytime there's a shifting in balance of power, there's an opportunity for those to kick out the table leg from someone else so that they can get a few feet ahead. So there are people who certainly don't hate us, but really know that it will benefit them if we fall down and break an ankle. Because it changes the fluxing, shifting of power, changes the balance of power in a way that serves other people, other countries, other interests. So we very, very much would like to avoid a civil war. Anyone who thinks that a civil war would be awesome, let me just refer you to the previous one. Historically, if you don't know about it, read up on it. It was awful. It was terrible. It was horrible. Many people died. We talk about brother fighting brother, killing brother, because that's what was happening. Families were divided across the Mason-Dixon line, and they shot and killed each other. It was horrible. We don't want that to happen again, for so many reasons. Now, we understand that in the attempt to communicate to people to try and straighten them out, it's not working. Okay? I run into people all day long who come to me and say, oh, Randy, don't you think that this and that, and they want to basically have their own belief system reinforced because of confirmation bias. They don't want the truth. They want what they believe to be reinforced. And if I tell them that what they believe isn't true, then cognitive dissonance kicks in, and then I must not be real or true or telling the truth because I'm disagreeing with what this person wants to believe. True story. A couple weeks ago, I was at a local conference back in my home state. I was having this exact conversation. I was starting off having this exact talk about confirmation bias and cognitive dissonance. And a person who was sitting in the audience, who I will not name, but if I said their name, you would all know who it was, because this is a person who is a speaker and a researcher, whom I thought would know better. But as if on cue, I said something that this person did not agree with, and they started yelling and screaming and shouting at me from the fifth row about how I must be wrong. It was the most bizarre thing ever. I have asked so many people, have you ever had someone do that to you? Like another speaker start yelling? And they're, no, I've never had that happen. So I've never heard of that happening at an event before. I've never had it happen. I was shocked. But it was on cue, right? I was talking about confirmation bias, cognitive dissonance, and then the minute I said something that they didn't like, they got defensive and reactive and jumped down my throat because I was the one telling them that they had to examine what they thought was right. So we know that that's the problem. We can't straighten these sides out right now. We've tried. There's no way to bring them into a middle ground right now because everyone's convinced that they're correct and that the other side are a bunch of blood-drinking baby murderers. Okay? So there really are a limited number of choices to avoid some of the problems that are inevitably going to happen if we don't interrupt them. I wish I could remember off the top of my head who said this. A famous Native American chief who said, look, if we don't change the direction we're going to end up exactly where we're headed. Right? Right? Okay, so this is a situation. If we don't change the direction that we're going to go exactly where we're headed into Civil War 2.0. So that and so many other conflicts that are boiling over and getting ready to explode would be mitigated by a single hostile enemy. All right? So again, we get to bust out all our tools, bust out all our toys, create a narrative in which we get to get through our disclosure event with only a little bit of hair mussing. Fingers crossed that it's not that bad. Because if we don't, what's going to happen will be worse. Okay? If we allow our world to implode on itself, socially, economically, environmentally, do you think we're a strong enough species to really get through that without going through another, 1,000 or 2,000 years of stone ages or dark ages from that? If you don't think dark ages can happen again, I would remind people that when the library at Alexandria was in full function, the world was approaching a state of enlightenment. And then some bastards burned it to the ground, and we had 400 years of dark ages. So it's just a matter of stomping out the light of civilization, and we're just in barbarism. Right? The line between civilization and barbarism is very short. Look at some of the countries in whose civilizations we have bombed into the Stone Age, and see whether their civilization continues to function or whether they devolved straight into barbarism. Okay? You think we're better than that? You think we're not animal enough? You think you're not dog, bear, or weasel, or snake enough, an animal in you, to behave like that one? If you're desperate enough, if you're starving, if you're hungry, if you're thirsty, if your life is in danger, if half of your family is already dead, you don't think you'll get desperate? You don't think you might do something extreme? Maybe you will, maybe you won't. Other people definitely will. So anyone who thinks that a descent, once we allow civilization to start to crumble, that we're going to rebuild it from the ashes, sure, in a few thousand years. Sure. Maybe a few hundred if we're lucky. But if we want to get through this difficult period, we have to steer this away from the rocks. Okay? There are only so many ways to do that. I'm not advocating which is the best way. I am simply telling you the information as it has come to me that the decision is being directed this way. Because the people who get to decide this stuff are coming to an agreement that that's the best way for it to work out. Because on paper, it works out the best. There is no telling from where we stand right here whether plan A or plan B is better. Which one would work better? Which one there would be lesser loss of life? Which one would be a more peaceful transition? Which one would be faster? There's no way to say that. We can look at it on paper, but until it happens, we don't know. So the people who get to decide this are looking at projections. They're looking at numbers. This many people die this way, this many people die this way. This is a percentage chance for civil war. If this happens, this is the percentage for civil war if it goes this way. And so we've kind of achieved a consensus that's about 75% from the people who are sitting at this imaginary table that I'm making with my hands here. So of all the military intelligence, government, legislative, corporate personnel who have a vote at this table, about 75% have said, okay, we understand, we can't do nothing because we'll die horribly, civilization will crumble and it will suck, and the billionaires will lose money. And I guarantee you want to motivate a billionaire? Tell him he's not going to make billions of dollars a year anymore. Say, oh, you want to live in your bunker that you spent all that money on while civilization rebuilds itself? Okay, We'll see how your grandchildren come out when they've never seen the sun, right? We'll see how you enjoy breathing recycled air for the next 90 years. Good job. Eating processed meals in a package. Oh, awesome. Let me tell you, bunker life ain't so cool. All right? So it's starting to come to a realization point that these guys were thinking, no, I got my bunker, I'll save my money and my food, and we'll be fine. It's like, yeah, but you're not going to make any money for that amount of time. You're going to lose billions and billions of dollars. What can we do? Oh, well, okay, I'm glad you asked. What can we do is we can go with another plan, and then we tell the billionaires, if you go with this other plan so that we can change things, we guarantee we will enter an age of economic prosperity in which billionaires will get to become trillionaires. Okay? You think the billionaires are motivated by that conversation? Oh yeah, it's why we're at 75%. All right? Because we convinced them through their greed, which, you got to negotiate people with where they're at, right? Part of the failure earlier on was trying to altruistically convince a bunch of greedy people that they needed to do the right thing because it was the right thing. I know that sounds good, but in practice that wasn't working. So someone said, all right, what if we just give them what they want? What if we just tell the billionaires, all right, we got a plan, you'll get really filthy rich if you play along. And all of a sudden we started, okay, I'll play along. If I get to be a trillionaire instead of a billionaire? I get 20 houses instead of 10 houses? As if somebody needs that many, right? But to that mentality, to the CEO mentality, psychological type, which is its own thing if you've ever known a CEO, we worked with that. Fine, here's what you want. Here, we'll give it to you. You can have it. Take the money. Just say yes. You can have the money so we can fix everything. What gets to happen when we do that is the coolest thing ever, which is what we have now in the intergalactic trade system that we're currently participating in, all right? We take this a step back. I'll try and see if I can cram intergalactic trade into a 5-minute short essay here. So, over this period of time that we have come to know more and more and more and more species, and this is an exponential curve. Our current list of species that we trade with is approaching 1,000. 1,000. There's a lot of people that like our stuff. Anybody know why? Anybody know why we as Terrans make better stuff? Nobody. Wow. Cool. All right, I'm going to tell you why. So there are a number of species who, when they build something and it works, they're like, cool, that works. And they never change it. There are species who are flying around in the same frickin' Model T spaceship that they invented 5,000 years ago. We think that other species have the same level of creativity and ingenuity that we have. They don't. It's rare. Turns out it's rare. A human being builds something, depending on the person, within either a matter of seconds or minutes from having completed that thing, they're thinking, okay, next time I'm going to put fins on it and ailerons. I'm going to put bigger jet boots on the back, right? I'm going to paint a stripe on the side. We're immediately thinking how to make it better. Not everybody does that, which is why in the last 70 years, we have gone farther in the development of spacecraft technology and weapon technology than most of our neighbors. We also have a thing called mass manufacturing. Anybody ever worked in a factory? If you ever worked in a real factory, you know that they have that system designed down to the pennies per second that it costs to do something and that they make profit to do something. We have this incredibly efficient manufacturing system as Terrans. So not only do we make better stuff, we can make more of it in a shorter period of time. So it turns out we have I'll just go over the top 3 exports that we have right now. Top 3 exports that we export out of our solar system to other species. Number 1, weapons technology. crazy, angry, warlike monkeys that we are, having filled our entire planet with guns, bombs, rockets, and missiles, have now decided that we need to sell arms to the rest of the galaxy because we make better stuff, right? Because we're good at it, because we're angry, crazy, warlike little monkeys, and we're good at it. Better at it than a lot of other species, as it turns out. So in a short period of time, we have made better gear, better hardware that other people would rather buy than the stuff that they make. So we're drawing in gross net somewhere that's actually in the quadrillions of dollars. Don't try to imagine that if you can. I have a hard time, even when I draw out the zeros. But somewhere in the quadrillions of dollars of hardware that we are shipping out of the solar system. Number 2. Anybody know the number 2 export? Beer. Beer. Oh, all right, you want to hear me explain? All right. So where did beer come from? Where did we get beer? Who gave it to us? Who gave it to us? Maybe the Sumerians? Maybe goddess Ninkasi, the goddess of beer making? Maybe she taught us how to ferment beer because they wanted us to make beer for them because they're lazy and they wanted us to do their work for them, right? Beer is not a terrestrial invention, is it? That means beer is an extraterrestrial invention, right? Right? Yes, okay, it comes from off-world. So they brought it here. And guess what? Like I just said, we make stuff better. I guarantee, I know brewmasters who, after they're done making a brew, they're like, okay, next time it's going to be a little less hops and a little more yeast. I mean, the same reason that we build better stuff is the same reason we make better beer. Because we're perfectionists about it. Wine is also a big export, but we make less of it. And for some reason, they like beer more. Number 3 export. Anybody know this one? Children's clothing. Children's clothing. My own personal notion on this, it's not for children. It's for people who are this tall. This is one of my favorites because this is where my imagination starts to work. And my imagination sees on some other world some little dude walking down the street in his Levi's. And then someone saying, oh, he's got those new Earth jeans on. Right? That's hilarious to me. That's hilarious. But, okay, anybody know what the intergalactic norm of clothing is? It's an easy one. The robe. The robe. 2 pieces of fabric stitched together, you got a robe. It's the most common article of clothing worn by species all over the known universe. It's a frickin' robe. Second most common clothing is none at all. There are intergalactic nudists. Why should I cover myself because it offends you? Right? So we make clothing. Like we don't do, well, okay, so we have nudists and we have people who wear robes, but more than that, we have a fashion industry that makes new stuff every year. Do you understand what that looks like to most species? That looks like we're changing our fashion design every week to them. Like, oh my God, how can you figure out what to wear? You're changing what you think is cool to wear faster than we can catch up with what you guys are doing. Right? That seems ridiculous to them. But that means that there are some places who are just like, ooh, that looks good. I want to wear that. Ooh, that's cool. Because we make better stuff. Right? So right now, that trade system has a cap on it. There are only certain people who have permission to participate. And they're making all the money. So those quadrillions of dollars a year, are you seeing any of that? 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 I'm not seeing any of that money. There are. wouldn't you like the opportunity to engage in trade with extraterrestrial species? Wouldn't that, anybody in trade or in business, you're in manufacturing, you make something, you sell something, anybody? You don't want to sell that stuff to aliens? Why not? It's an endless marketplace. Endless. If we all got to participate in that marketplace, then we get to get out of this back and forth where we're constantly stealing from each other. Right? In a closed system, you're fighting over all the same dollars. Right? What if, think about it this way, you think about the earth as a system in which it's not closed upon itself, but which has the availability of a marketplace that is unlimited outside of itself. Are you following me? So if I tell you, in a post-disclosure environment, we get to enter a 10,000-year golden age of prosperity of which this planet has never seen, ever. Does that sound cool? Yeah, thank you. Does that sound cool? Yeah? I mean, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you like things the way they are? Is this awesome right now? You love the economy the way it is? You love the social structure the way it is? You love access to that shitty medical technology that you have down here? That's awesome for you? No? Oh, so you do want something that's better than that. Sweet. Okay, this is better. Way better. Way better. The question is, again, how do we get there? So we can either drag it out with people who want to negotiate forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and drag it out for an ever and ever and ever. Or we can say, let's create a starting point in which you have urgent, what's the word I'm thinking of there, the other word that comes after that? You have essentially something that's considered an urgent threat. And something that's an urgent threat, you can't just spend the next 12 months investigating. You have to do something about it right now. So when you have an urgent threat, then all of that stuff that we have that we're keeping a secret, we can convince and force, strong-arm people to give to us in such a way that we need them. Through urgent, desperate life or death need. Now, this could go either way still. Okay? Just because a decision has been made that we're very likely heading that direction, at some point someone could decide, oh, you know what, we're going to change our mind, we're going this way. It could happen. So if it turns out I'm not right, I totally disqualify any notion that I'm telling you this is absolutely positively 1,000,000% the way it's absolutely going to be, because I can't do that. That's not my job. I can tell you, based on the information that I've been given, we are at a high percentage point of agreement by those who get to decide that that is the direction we are going at this time. That's not the same thing as saying it's happening regardless. Follow me on that? So, and the only reason that I think that it matters for me to even tell you that is just so that you're not caught with your pants around your ankles, okay? We would prefer that people are not shocked and surprised, because shock and surprise creates fear. Fear creates thought waves which create and bend matter and energy and create a fear-based reality in which bad things will occur. So the less people are afraid, the less likely that the creation of an outcome of terrible, horrible consequences will occur. It is true that if people are thinking better thoughts about the reality they live in, it will turn out better. That is how our brains work and how our quantum entanglement computer works, and our ability to bend matter and energy around us, especially collectively as a group. Oh, anything that they have that they make better or that we have shortages of. That's the whole point of trade. There's somebody out there that has more cadmium than we've ever seen and can get it to us for pennies on the dollar of what we can mine it for, and we'd rather trade someone something for that than spend $1.25 to mine it out of an asteroid somewhere when we can spend 10 cents on the dollar to trade with it for somebody. Right, the question is environmental degradation and oh, yeah, oh, sorry.
We wait for the questions until he's finished, and then we'll...
And I'm going to finish right here, and then we'll get to some questions. We'll take a little bit of time. So, more importantly, what I hope that you take away is that how you think about your reality makes a bigger difference than you think about the world has an impact on you. You have an impact on your reality in a bigger way than you imagine that it does. And so whatever the future holds, your ability to understand yourself as a creative tool, as a creative being, is more important than anything else I can tell you, any other advice I can give you, building a bunker in the ground or anything like that. The most valuable thing that you can have and understand is that your ability to form and create your reality is the most important thing in how whatever is going to happen goes for you personally. That's, I think, the most important thing that I would like people to take away. The second thing is, if what I say starts to happen, and here's how you'll know. So, if any of you have been paying attention a little bit to what's happening in the world, and it seems like it's getting crazier and crazier and crazier, yeah, it is. Expect that it's going to get nuttier and crazier and crazier, and just when you think it can't get any crazier, oh, it will. And then when you think, oh, that's totally the top, nope, it's going to get crazier. And when you think, okay, this has got to be the maximum level of crazy that we can have in this world right now, nope, it's going to get crazier. Then, when it is truly the craziest that anybody could have possibly imagined it to get, that's when it will happen. And you're going to continue to see these steps that other people have spoken about as far as members of the military and the government, throwing out these little test balloons and seeing what people, we used to say, send up the flagpole and see who salutes at it, right? So they're throwing this information out, trying to get a response, trying to get a reaction, so that when something occurs, everyone's not surprised. So that more than not, people go, oh, I knew that was going to happen. See, I knew that was totally going to happen, right? That's what we want. We want people prepared, not shocked. Because it's the shock that will make people go crazy.